Right, so this video is comparing Rossetti's Winter My Secret to Ibsen's A Doll's House. Now, as Rossetti poems go, this is one of her kind of most famous, kind of most enigmatic, and as a result, kind of most irritating. Um, a nice bit of context for you is that when she first wrote it, one of her first title for it, I should say, was Nonsense. Which kind of gives you an idea, I don't know, maybe about her playfulness. And apparently, it was published in 1862 in her Goblin Market collection, which obviously was her famous, first very famous, successful poetry collection. So sort of from the middle of her writing career. And as I said, because its title was Nonsense, this idea of what is the secret? Was there a secret, or was it just all a little bit silly? Now, of course, the reason to kind of draw attention to this idea of the secret is because of what it symbolizes. And I think that's the most important thing about this poem, especially when you compare it to A Doll's House. It's my secret, and her secret basically symbolizes power. Because essentially it starts with this sort of rhetorical question. I tell my secret, no, indeed, not I. Perhaps someday, who knows, but not today. So the whole way through, it's a very playful tone because of the use of these rhetorical questions, repetition, and so forth. Now, of course, this is giving her power because she doesn't want to have to share it. And this is very, very similar to Nora and Nora's sort of secret that she too has about the money, or about the loan, I should say. Now, what's interesting, of course, is that Nora is desperate to tell Christina about it. And there's that really irritating bit where she's sort of playing and she says, something along the lines of, you're desperate to find out now, aren't you? And I think that kind of idea that she gets a lot of power from the fact that she has this secret, and she sort of teases Christina to the point that she doesn't actually reveal where she's got it for some time. So Christina assumes she's having an affair with Rank and he's paid it for her. But the fact that she wants to hold on to it because it gives her some power, especially the fact that she's been working as well, and that she keeps that going for quite some time. Now, obviously, this plays out throughout the play. You've also got the sort of the point in the play that Christina asks her, will you ever tell him? And she makes this point to say, yes, from now, years from now, sorry, when I'm no longer pretty. So this idea, if we go to the end of this poem, where she says, perhaps my secret I may say, and Nora's kind of when I'm no longer pretty. And she mentions it be a good thing to have up my sleeve. So for her, she's basically storing this up for when she can no longer get what she wants from Torvald by being a sort of trophy wife as far as she's concerned. So it gives her a sort of power. Now, the second sort of big symbol in this is this idea of these sort of playful relationships. And as I mentioned before, she sort of teases Christina with it. She also teases Rank, not in the same way, but the fact that she kind of calls him naughty. She hits him, the whole awful, embarrassing flirting with the stockings. I was going to write flirty stockings. And this idea that she's got this line, which I quite like here, I cannot ope to everyone who taps. So this idea for her, this sort of playfulness, and of course, I suppose the big thing is to remember is the chocolates. The fact that she's eating them behind Torvald's back, actually quite literally in some productions, that she's sort of going, no, I'd never do that. And that's because she's choosing her sort of source of power, and she takes great pleasure out of having this gossip that no one else knows about, or rather that Torvald certainly doesn't know about. So just another symbol that I think, as well as sort of playful relationships and the idea, of course, of power, because this poem is, quite long, is this idea of references to cold. And throughout the play, the cold in the play is a reference to both the outdoors, but also literally kind of being outside the safety of the domestic sphere. And I've mentioned that one before. So this idea of, women, they lived within the domestic sphere. And in Ibsen, this is often symbolized, particularly in the play, by the stove, which would have been the sort of center of the household. So this idea that outside is cold, and of course, the person that represents the cold is both Christina when she turns up, and Nora kind of says, "I'll sit by the fire, you're very cold," and also Krogstad has to turn up in kind of furs and stuff. They are both external to the domestic sphere. Just trying to get that scene back in again. They are both outside the marriage, I suppose, because they are both at that point widowed. Whereas Nora is inside. So there's sort of lots of imagery to the cold in here. Now, what I quite like about this is within the play, there's lots of symbols of her kind of putting on the sort of lots of coats being taken on and off. And at the end, when she goes to leave, she sort of puts her coat on, and that's very definitive. And when she goes to run away, she puts it on, and then Torvald takes it off her. So this idea of the cold being sort of dangerous is, I guess, quite a similar image there. So I think as poems go, there's probably a lot more to say, especially with the natural imagery. But I think if you go for the comparison to the cold, and you can see that most likely in this line here. And obviously it's playful. We talked about the sort of playful relationships, this reference to lots of questions in here, but the reference to the drafts, and then whoever shows his nose to Russian's nose to be pecked at by every wind that blows. So this idea, actually, it's protective. So she's not just keeping her secret because it gives her power, which it does, but it's also protective. And Nora kind of going out into the cold. She actually remarks when Christine first turns up, when she finds out she'd taken a steamer all by herself, that she's very brave. So the fact that Christina is able to brave the cold, she's very jealous of it. So yeah, there you go.